This is part 3 of our Link to the Past walkthrough, and in this part we're going to be taking on the first dungeon in the game, the Eastern Palace.
And there's really not much to it. It's really not that great of a dungeon, but once again, it's the first dungeon in the game. You're really not going to get that much out of it. It really just serves its purpose.
And to be honest, it really ended up being pretty low on our Link to the Past dungeon ranking because of that reason. It's just an opening.
Which we are planning on redoing, actually, because we split it up and everything, and so... But
we're in the process.
We didn't include all the dungeons that maybe you should have, but go ahead.
I kind of forgot we hadn't put that out yet.
Yeah.
Getting a little ahead of ourselves there. But yeah, just... Going with being a first dungeon, it's not the most exciting place in the world.
You know what I've always loved about, though, is the blue and green color. Like,
Me
I don't know
too.
why, just that really goes good as a combo together. You wouldn't think it would, but I don't know, it works for me in this dungeon. But one thing we kind of talked about, you won't know this until the second dungeon if you've never played this game. But like all the Light World dungeons have the same thing. That's one thing that we really just hate. Like
we do.
If each dungeon had its own theme, it could really just set the game apart even more.
Well, and it's just kind of frustrating too because there's so many themes in this game. Like going to Hyrule Castle, Sanctuary, Overworld, like caves, just so many themes. But for the dungeons, they kind of copped out a little bit.
Yeah, they did. Like. Now, the theme is very memorable. I don't think it's as memorable as like the original Zelda and Zelda 2, but still a good dungeon theme. And then when we get to the second half of the game, we'll actually get a different dungeon theme.
We do.
But
But one thing I do like about this dungeon though is right off the bat, you're able to see that room that has the dungeon item in it. Like you're on that like overwalk, and you see that giant treasure chest down below. And it's such a tease right there, right off the bat, because we'll need the big key before we can open it up and get the dungeon item.
Now, my first question is, why are these bones just kind of sitting right here on the floor? Like, that's kind of creepy. But before we started this part, you actually brought up a good point where, like, they had walkways going over certain areas of the room. And that kind of presented the first, I don't know what you would call it, not 3D, but...
It's a depth.
Yeah, like a depth factor to it. So that was actually pretty cool seeing.
It was, and it makes it look like these rooms are multi-leveled, which they kind of are, because you've got these higher walkways, but it's also...
And we had not had that yet in the first two Zelda games.
And it's all still like the first floor, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
But it's really cool just to see it, and that will come into play like all throughout this game, like where you have to get to the upper levels and jump down, things like that. It really just adds another dimension, like I said, not 3D per se, but something else to the dungeon.
Now you saw me go up to that tile later on. Those tiles are basically that white thing on the wall.
Yeah.
They're basically hints. Now, we won't do every single one of those in the game. If it's on the way, sometimes I stopped, but then sometimes it was actually right there. I just forgot about it. So it's one of those things, like if I was recording, I kind of remembered it or saw it. Like I stopped by and kind of wanted to give you what the hint was, but we won't do every single one.
Now, it's kind of like having a companion before we had full-time companions, you know? It gives you the hints.
I'd rather have the tile boxes.
Me too.
Like, we had the control over when they talk, which I would love that with, like, you know, Nabby, our companions.
Tattle,
a wife. Anyway.
That was your words, not mine.
But she's never watching this channel. She's not allowed.
No. One thing I do think is kind of cool about this dungeon, and I'm not a big fan of dark rooms, but a couple of rooms ago we were in a dark area, and that actually foreshadows a later dungeon in the game that's kind of related to this.
It's in the same area later on in the game. Like this is the third time we've actually said something like that, where
foreshadowing.
Or I think it's the third time where something foreshadows something that we're going to see later on in the game.
Yep, they do a really good job of like.
I hate this room.
Oh,
I absolutely hate this room. You get the Stalfos, you get the Igor, these bubbles, and why I'm not using my magic powder on these bubbles is beyond me. Because
for one thing, you're out of magic, so.
Oh well, actually, that's a very good point. I did not notice that, so that could be the reason why.
It is a very annoying room though, because as soon as you kill all the enemies, the bubbles just split and come after you, and the way they bounce off the walls, it looks predictable, but they are hard to dodge.
It's such a small space, especially the walkways like along the treasure chest where the big key was. It's actually the big key in this game, not the boss key.
Yep.
Why they switched it like every other game, I have no idea why.
Well, one thing though that actually goes back, I remember back in when we were escaping Hyrule Castle, we mentioned we didn't understand why the boomerang was in a small chest, there was no big key in that dungeon. You have to.
That's a very good point.
I just thought about that.
That's actually that nailed it. You actually just nailed it right there. So
every now and then the light bulb goes off.
Yeah.
I see through the mirror and I think of something.
The bad thing is it's part 3 out of 29, so we already blew our load.
We did.
Like on part 3 of the game.
I was about to make a joke.
Because it only happens once or twice a game. So
it does. But that's. I kind of just thought about that, and it actually makes sense. You have to have the big key to open the big treasure chest, and we just didn't have that in Hyrule Castle.
I hate this view right here. And I'm not a fan of this dungeon, but still the obstructed view just, At least I like to see it. And those Igors are kind of hard because
they are.
If you can't see them, you don't necessarily know when they're coming at you.
You don't know when they're vulnerable.
Well, I guess that's most enemies in the dark. But I don't know. Like you said, you don't know when they're vulnerable and when you can kill them.
It is cool. I kind of like the concept of the Igors, that it's like they'll open up their eye and you either shoot them with a bow or hit them with a pot. Only in that couple seconds when they're coming after you, so it makes them a little more challenging of an enemy than just the some of the skeletons whose names I've totally forgotten.
Now this room was difficult. I didn't even get hit, but I mean, if you didn't that first time in that room, if you didn't know where that switch was, that room became actually pretty difficult.
You had to go after all 4 switches.
And at this point, we don't have any hearts in the game, so I mean,
no.
I mean, you can actually. I remember I died quite a bit. When I first started playing this game, it seems like the early Zelda games are like that. Like the original Zelda,
you're gonna die.
I died so many times in the beginning, and this game was kind of the same way.
One thing I don't like. Well, okay, we've talked about a couple things we don't like. The one thing that really it's not
going to be very many.
No, but a couple things stood out about this dungeon. Having that the symbol on the door before we came, and I know you mentioned this before we started recording. Having the symbol on the floor before we actually get to the boss was kind of not a bad thing necessarily, but kind of annoying.
Yeah. Well, it made me mad because it's actually not the boss room next. It's supposed to be right before the boss room. And
exactly.
I don't know in this game if it's actually right before the exact boss, but
yeah,
I don't understand why they put it there.
Me neither.
When they're actually not getting to the boss room. Now, the first boss, Armos Knights, actually I didn't think it was that bad of a boss.
Not at all.
That was a great first boss, and come on, you're using the bow and arrow, and I don't know if you said, but getting the bow and arrow this early in the game is just awesome.
I don't
think you did.
I think first of all, I think they look pretty awesome. They do
the
look
biggest
enemies we faced to this point.
And there's 6 of them.
And there's 6 of them, and yeah, you can kind of get in a safe spot.
Or am I just drinking too much?
No, there's 6 of them. Okay. No, I was gonna say, Dick, buddy, there's 2 of them.
Just hit the one in the middle.
Just hit the one in the middle, always. It's like me bowling.
Yeah.
There's 30 pins down there, I promise. But it's easy to avoid them if you kind of get in the corner and just line them up when they get in a straight line. But in the second form, he can be a little bit challenging. He'll land on you a couple times.
Yeah. Now this right here, you can actually hit him with the arrow, and it's not very many times. Maybe once, twice. 3 at the most, I think, but I just didn't get a good angle right there. I was actually planning on hitting him with the arrow, but I kind of got off to the side, so I was like, I'm going to hit the sword swings, thinking I wouldn't get hit.
Yep.
Never got hit until this recording.
Of course.
Anyway, you want to go ahead?
Oh, now that we've got the Pendant of Courage, this will wrap up part 3 of Link to the Past walkthrough.